here is Chris Hedges' latest article, The Case for Genocide. And he does great work as always. And I just wanted to read you a few points on this case for genocide. The exhaustive 84-page brief submitted by South Africa to the International Court of Justice, the ICJ, charging Israel with genocide is hard to refute. As I've been bringing you for many weeks now, Israel's campaign of indiscriminate killing, wholesale destruction of infrastructure, including housing, hospitals, and water treatment plants, along with its use of starvation as a weapon, accompanied by genocidal rhetoric, which I've brought you a lot of that from their higher political and military leaders who speak of destroying Gaza and ethnically cleansing the 2.3 million Palestinians, makes a strong case against Israel for genocide. But that does not mean the judges on the court will rule in South Africa's favor. The pressure the U.S. will bring, Secretary of State Anthony Blinken has called South Africa charges meritless. Right. On the judges, the pressure the U.S. is bringing on the judges, drawn from the members of the UN, will be intense. A ruling of genocide is a stain that Israel, which weaponizes the Holocaust to justify its genocide, would find hard to remove. A ruling by the court could be years away, however. That's an important point that not a lot of people are talking about. This ruling won't come down for years. But South Africa is asking for provisional measures that would demand Israel cease its military assault. In essence, a permanent ceasefire. This decision could come within 2 or 3 weeks. So that's the hope, is that there would be this provisional judgment before the final judgment. It is a decision that is not based on the final ruling by the court, but on the merits of the case brought by South Africa. It will be determined by genocidal intent, the intent to eradicate in whole or in part a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group as defined in the Genocide Convention. The South African lawyers who compared Israel's crimes with those carried out by the apartheid regime in South Africa, remember that, showed the court a video of Israeli soldiers celebrating and calling for the death of Palestinians. They said these soldiers were singing that there are no uninvolved civilians, which includes babies. That shows genocidal intent. They provided the court with photos of mass graves where bodies were buried, often unidentified. No one, including newborns, are spared. Israeli leaders accuse Hamas with carrying out genocide, right? That's so, and I want to bring up this point because this is a good way to debate someone. If you're arguing with someone about Israel and they try and say to you, it's Hamas committing genocide against Israel, or Hamas wants to commit genocide against Israel, they just don't have big enough guns, and so it's them that want genocide. Here is part of your response in that case. Israeli leaders accuse Hamas with carrying out genocide, although legally, if you are the victims of genocide, you are not permitted or able to commit genocide. So if you're the victim of genocide, then you can't be accused of committing genocide. Hamas is also not a state, which Israel has fought against for decades to allow Palestinians to have a state. Hamas is not a state. It is not, therefore, party to the Genocide Convention. The Hague, for this reason, has no jurisdiction over the organization because, and this is such an important point legally, it may not be an important point beyond, once you get into just people and where we live and things like that. But legally, it's a very important point that Gaza is, the Palestinian people are already, they're the occupied people. They live technically within Israel's control. So you have Israel that has forced these people as refugees into this tiny area that is not a nation. It has not been given national status. So Israel forced them in there, treats them as an open-air prison, controls their water, their food, their medicine, everything, their construction materials, everything. And so they can't be called a nation. If you had a bunch of people in a prison, if you had 100 guys in a prison in the United States, you couldn't say, well, they're their own nation inside that prison, and therefore they hate us and they want to kill us for putting them in that prison. So therefore they're trying to commit genocide against us. No, you have them in prison, assholes. You can't. It's not. You can't act like they're committing genocide against you when you put them in an open air prison. The Hague, for this reason, has no jurisdiction over the organization of Hamas. Israel also claims that Palestinians are warned to evacuate areas that will come under attack and provided with safe areas. Okay, so here's another important point that comes up in this debate when people want to debate you about Israel. This is another one they want to say. They say the IDF has tried to warn Gazans to leave areas they're going to bomb. They try to tell them. They drop leaflets sometimes. And so it's those people's fault. If a baby chooses to say, if a 6-month-old decides, I'm staying here, well, after the pamphlets rain down, even though he can't read and doesn't understand what a pamphlet is and doesn't understand what the world is and doesn't understand where he is, if he chooses to stay there, then that's on him. You know, we warned you we were going to bomb, little baby, 6-month-old. Why didn't you leave? Crawl your ass out of there. Anyway, that's the excuse of people who defend Israel's right to genocide. And they say, well, we warned them. The IDF warns them. Well, even in those cases, first of all, the IDF doesn't warn with every bombing, but even in the cases where they warn them, these pamphlets often tell Gazans to go to safe areas, go south, go to this refugee camp, etc. However, as the South African lawyers documented, the safe areas are routinely bombed by Israel with numerous civilian casualties, thousands killed and injured. So you can't argue you tell them to leave if you then bomb the places you tell them to leave to. Get it? So yet again, that is a bull crap argument from people trying to defend Israel's right to genocide.